while ago I did a comprehensive review of the OneLeaf Find NV200 night vision binoculars, which are really an impressive, well-built, high-quality day and night vision binoculars with real high-quality lenses. One of the leading features of these high-quality binoculars is the interchangeable lenses for different uses. So I tested out the 50mm lens, and the people at OneLeaf sent me the 35mm version, and I'm trying that out. So what I'll do in this short test is just compare the difference between the 50 and the 35. And they also have other lenses in development, I believe a 70mm and a 100mm, which would be, basically a telephoto night vision binocular. So one of the things about these lenses is they're really high quality. You can see they're multi-coated and nitrogen filled on both sides, so they're waterproof, and that's what's really nice about these binoculars. They're weatherproof. And the other thing is the lenses are really high quality. A tremendous amount of light gets through the lens, so much so that you actually, during the daytime, there's a filter that goes over the lens to keep too much light from coming in. So when you want to swap out lenses, you take off the filter. So what you do with this is this reduces the amount of light getting into the lens, because this is actually an f1.2 lens. So like in low light situations, maybe in the early morning or in the evening when there's still light out, then you take this off and get the maximum amount of light. But in the the bright sunlight of the day with a lot of light, then you put this on so that the sensor can make a better job of developing high quality imageries and videos. And it uses the Sony Starvis sensor, which work well in low light situations even before the IR kicks in. So the way you remove these lenses is simply, there's a little connection underneath here, and you just turn it all the way over to the right, and then it pops out. And this is the 50mm lens. You can see it's really a high quality lens. See the nice coating on there. So this is the 50mm lens, and this is the 35mm lens. Basically more of a wide angle and more of a longer range zoom in lens. And if you look down in there, you can actually see the sensor, the Sony sensor that drives this quality binocular. You put the 35mm lens in now, and you put it down to where this is your focus wheel, so you put it all the way down there. Hold this in, and carefully step it in there, and you'll feel it click in like that. And then you continue to turn it until it really feels tight. It can be a little bit tricky to get it in here the first couple of times you do it. So to make sure that you got it in there, release it and make sure it doesn't pull out. See, if you're able to pull it out like that, for example, that means you didn't get it in right. So you pull it down, and you make sure you get down there good and tight, and then it won't pull out, and you know you've got it in there in the right position. So it's really fairly easy to swap the lenses in and out. First couple of times you do it, you'll get the hang of it, but just make sure that you got it in there, that they don't pull out. So, my impression of the two lenses is they're both great lenses for my particular applications with mostly birding. I would prefer to use the 50mm lens, which gives you greater magnification than the 35mm lens. But the other thing too, though, is if you're going to be working, close in, like for example, I had some elk in here, fairly close in. And in that case, when you're looking at animals, close in, sometimes the 35mm is actually better for getting, better pictures. Sometimes the animal is too close and is actually filling up the whole viewfinder and the whole image, even at 4K. So it's nice to have that flexibility. Now, if you're using it for long range, especially for hunting or target practice or just long range surveillance at night especially, then you want your 50mm lens. And what's impressive about the 50mm lens is the speed of it. f1.2 really is quite a quality lens. So again, just to go back, it's a simple matter of pushing down on this, turning it to the right, and then it comes out, and then you take your other lens, you'll feel it's fit down in the detent there, and then you hold this down and then you just tighten it up like that, and your 50mm is in there. Now the focus wheel on the 50mm is pretty tight, but it loosens up with use, and that's just a sign really of a good quality construction of the lens. And you can see that was real easy. Just put the 50mm back in there. And again, you make sure if it's in there solid, you know, the first couple of times you get it. So for my particular use, the 50mm is my favorite. But a lot of people have use for the 35, and I'll show you a bunch of real-world examples of what videos. Unfortunately, we had some elk passing through, so I took some video of elk and things like that, and show you the difference between the 50 and 35. But you know, you can, I think, if I recall, it's under $100 to buy the extra lens. So if you really want to use these binoculars to their full capability, you can just order it in the 50mm version and order a 35mm lens, or order it in the 35mm version and order a 50mm lens. And then in the not too distant future, I believe they're going to have a 70 and 100mm lens. So to summarize my impressions of the Find NV200 by OneLeaf, they're really outstanding night vision binoculars, really well made. I'll put a link to my review of the binoculars with the 50mm lens in the description, and just trying out the other lenses that come with it. There's a little possum flushy, 25 yards with the 35mm lens. Now I'll zoom in, 10 power zoom. Okay, there's 10 power. And let's go back out, go back to 1. And now let's put in the 50mm. Okay, now we're looking at the 50mm at 1, normal. 50mm lens at 0.5. And let's go into 10 power. And there's the 50mm at 10 power. 0.5 and 1. And we shall check the nighttime version next. Okay, there is our possum plushie at night with IR on, with the 50mm lens. Magnification, no magnification. And there's the regular laser that helps you sight things. Laser rangefinder is one thing, that's just the regular red laser for sighting. Okay, now let's go into 10 power, and we're using the 50mm lens here. Then touch up the focus a little bit, and we'll back out. Okay, now we've got the 35mm lens in there, looking at the same view, so you can compare. Got the rangefinder on there and see the 27.5 yards away basically. So let's go ahead and turn the rangefinder off, and that's about the best focus at this distance, at that normal magnification. We're at 1 power on the IR, and that's plenty. Let's zoom in at 10 power and compare. There's 10 power. Get our best focus. And again, the possum is predominantly white. And there's your comparison. 35mm, 10 power. And here in total darkness, a little possum. It's actually a tiny possum.